We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back with Liberty Nation senior political analyst and longtime host of this here radio show, Mr. Tim Donner. Earlier in the show, we were talking about the impact of the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. But now I want to talk a little more broadly, putting the assassination attempt to one side if we can, and talk about how the polls are looking, how his recent decisions, for example, the J.D. Vance decision, are going to impact what's happening in the election. And there's something particular that I want to pull you up on, Tim, because you're a polling guy. You understand the Electoral College. You understand the importance of the different states, probably better than anybody that I've read. And I want to talk about Pennsylvania here. Now, that the Keystone State, it's pretty crucial for Joe Biden. If he doesn't get Pennsylvania in the Electoral College, he doesn't get the White House, does he?
I think it's fair to say, as many have said, whoever wins Pennsylvania wins the presidency. Because it's possible for either Trump or Biden to win the presidency without winning Pennsylvania. But that's not going to happen because Pennsylvania is really a bellwether. It's sort of the pulse of the nation concentrated into one state. It's rural, it's urban, it's suburban. It's a very representative state. It's one that Trump won when he won in the election in 2016. Biden won it when he won the election in 2020. Pennsylvania is really, that's at the heart of this presidential election, which is why the fact that this assassination attempt occurred in Pennsylvania will play some part in who wins that state. But look, Trump was already winning that state. The Real Clear Politics average had Trump up in Pennsylvania by about 4 or 5 points. And this assassination attempt is going to not do anything but build that lead. It's certainly not going to diminish it. So Pennsylvania has always been, as Joe Biden kind of said about Donald Trump a few weeks ago, in the bullseye. It's the bullseye for Joe Biden, who has traveled to that state more than any other state in the country, other than his own Delaware, which of course is right next door. I mean, the Biden campaign has understood from the beginning that Pennsylvania is the keystone to the campaign. It's the key to winning the campaign, because it's also indicative of other things. If you win Pennsylvania, you're probably going to win Ohio, and you're going to be very competitive in Michigan and Wisconsin. Of course, Ohio is off the board now. It used to be a swing state. Now it's turned into a pretty much medium red state that's not really up for grabs anymore in a presidential election. So, look, Pennsylvania will tell you who's going to win this election. If you have to look at one state to figure out who the next president's going to be, excuse me, who the next president's going to be, it would be Pennsylvania, no question.
So you're absolutely right in the polling there. He's the last time I checked it, he was Donald Trump was 4.5 points up there, which is outside of the margin of error.
Yeah,
really. And there seems to be no stopping it. I'm been examining the numbers there, and at the time of recording, the last time Joe Biden was ahead in a poll there was back March, the end of March, and he was 10 points up, and it was a Franklin Marshall poll, which is the local outfit down there. And yes, it was such an outlier that even the people who were desperate to have some positive news of polling out of Pennsylvania were loath to really put too much weight on this poll because it's such an outlier.
But well, you never know with these polls, Mark, right after the assassination attempt, where pretty much everybody realized that Trump was going to get a bump for surviving the whole thing and his actions and raising his fist and his defiance and everything else. But Ipsos put out a poll like 2 days later showing Biden leading nationally by 2 points. People look at that stuff and they go, are you kidding? Who did you poll? Were you just trying to make a statement with this? I mean, those kind of polls, all they do. I remember there was one in, I think it was 2016, showing Trump trailing in Wisconsin by 17 points, and he won the state. So, those kind of polls, all they do is damage the credibility of the polling organizations, and you'd think that it would do it permanently. But, Mark, Americans have a short memory, and we tend to forget the polling agencies that completely blew it before or got it wrong. And we say, well, we'll listen to them again. It's sort of like economists. They always get it wrong, but we want to keep listening to them anyway.
There's 2 interesting thoughts on that. One, there's a gambler's term that you're only as good as your last hand.
Yes.
So if they can get one thing right, they can say our reputation's redeemed.
In baseball, they say you're only as good as the next day's starting pitcher. So
absolutely right.
The same idea. Yes.
Yeah. And the other aspect I was thinking is polling, especially in an election year, it's almost like a guilty sin that people just keep going back for.
They just can't quit. They can't quit it. It's a habit. It's an addiction for many people. They have to look at the polls. I remember, I've been there. I remember before the 2004 election in particular, for some reason, I was looking at the polls like every 2 hours for a week before, as if that was going to tell us, as if a change of half a point in one poll from another was indicative that Bush was going to win or Kerry was going to win. That's just political junkies feed off that like lifeblood.
Political junkies and their lifeblood. Tim Donner, thanks ever so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure.
And that's about all we have time for on this week's edition of Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio American Network. I've been your host, Mark Angelides. I'd like to thank our guest, Liberty Nation's executive editor, Lisa K. Donner, and Liberty Nation's senior political analyst, Mr. Tim Donner. I thank you both for being here, and of course, extend my thanks to you, the listeners out there, for tuning in each and every week. We do appreciate you. Thanks for being here. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.